the storm Isha aftermath. Winds of close to 100 miles per hour and torrential rain leave one dead, thousands without power and homes damaged.
All of a sudden I just heard this huge explosion. Honestly, it sounded like a bomb going off.
As the storm wreaked havoc on land, in the air, passengers faced an aborted landing at Edinburgh Airport, and others were diverted to Germany. Also making the headlines, the COVID inquiry hears that Scotland's chief medical officer told colleagues to delete WhatsApp messages during the pandemic.
In sport, the Celtic defender Mike Nawrocki admits it was tough being up.
Good evening. A man has died after Storm Isha battered the country with winds close to 100 miles per hour and torrential rain. Across the night, more than 50,000 homes were without power, whilst the roof of flats in Cumbernauld was ripped off, causing panic and damage.
Scotland's railways came to a standstill, with all rush hour services cancelled this morning, and there could be more on the way, with another named storm on the horizon. But first, Ollie Dickinson has the story of the clean-up after Storm Isha.
For more than 12 hours last night, Storm Isha battered much of central Scotland, waves breaching the coast, pylons sparking and cutting off power. Here in Cumbernauld, one sudden surge ripped the roof off this block of flats. And come the morning, those living here were left picking up the pieces and counting the cost.
All of a sudden I just heard this huge explosion. Honestly, it sounded like a bomb going off. At first I thought it was maybe a gas explosion, it was that loud. I looked out the window and I could see half my roof was hanging off.
Well, I'm pretty devastated and gutted. Well, my house was supposed to go on the market this week, so obviously that's not going to happen now. So we're just going to have to try and see what insurance we've got and get the building sorted before anything happens.
These flats are 40 years old, so they've withstood a lot. You think that they're going to be okay, but yeah, it was really bad last night.
In Grangemouth, an 84-year-old man died after the car he was travelling in collided with a fallen tree just before midnight. Police are asking for anyone with dashcam footage from the area to come forward. After all trains across the country were suspended from 7 o'clock last night, travellers this morning were forced to be patient or find alternatives as lines were checked.
Actually, just the fact that I had to make a decision yesterday to sort of like do this out, because I didn't want all the chaos, because I believe it was chaos early this morning.
We come in from Mount Vernon, Glasgow, it's alright. Bus is fine.
And I was trying to carry the train without knowing, get to the train station and I was cancelled. Get wait for nothing.
Elsewhere, as Ibrox Stadium had signage ripped apart and ripped off, Glasgow United's ground was also damaged. Meanwhile, across the central belt, cars were hit by falling debris, homes struck by uprooted trees. In the north of the country, where a rare red warning for danger to life was issued, a major operation on the energy network to reconnect around 24,000 homes without power during the night. Whilst across central and southern Scotland, more than 50,000 people were cut off, with 11,000 facing disruption into this morning.
Most of the damage overnight with the high winds has been debris from trees nearby and also fallen branches, which causes the wires to break.
With the tail end of Isha continuing to bring wind and rain, there is no let-up in sight. The next storm, Jocelyn, will bring amber warnings for rain and high winds from midnight tomorrow. Ollie Dickinson, STV News.
Passengers from a Ryanair flight which aborted a landing in Edinburgh in extreme winds have been speaking about the terrifying experience, but say the pilot made the right decision.
After two failed attempts to touch down in Scotland, the aircraft diverted to Germany, leaving many spending the night sleeping on floors. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
Arriving at Edinburgh Airport this afternoon, Ryanair FR095 from Cologne. On board, passengers who'd left Dublin 24 hours earlier for what should have been a flight of around 1 hour to Scotland.
I was surprised that they actually took off because it was the same in Dublin. It was awful to get up there and it was grand when you were up there, but coming into land it was my worst flight in 32 years. I was like, oh yeah boy, this is very scary. So yeah, very, very scary indeed.
To get so close, I mean, you could
Yeah.
see the runway.
Yeah, absolutely. The lights below us and everything were there and everything, and then we took up again, went up it because it was so cloudy, up into the clouds. We had 2 shots and just said, no, I'm not doing it.
Well, it's early afternoon now, and this is the relative calm after the storm. We're on the roof of the car park here, and there are still some pretty strong winds, but you can imagine trying to land here in the dark last night with gusts of up to 100 miles an hour must have been pretty horrendous. After flying from Dublin yesterday, the plane tried twice to land in Edinburgh before the captain decided it was too dangerous. With no landing slots available at UK airports, it travelled instead to Germany. It must have been a big decision for the pilot to be so close to the ground and pull out of it.
Yeah, in fairness, I was delighted with his decision. Now, how we were treated on the other end when we got to Germany, I wasn't too happy about, but...
So what happened there?
We were promised hotels, food vouchers. We arrived at 3-4 a.m. There was small children, there was parents, like we were left like the homeless, lying on the ground with no answers.
I think it was mainly just that there were 7 flights that were diverted to Cologne, so trying to accommodate that many flights and that many people. But they did well in terms of accommodating and putting people, families and that up in accommodation sort of quite quickly.
Flights due into Glasgow were also affected by the weather. This video from a passenger arriving from Amsterdam shows the conditions during an attempted landing, which was also aborted. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
Well, as we heard earlier, there's more bad weather to come. Well, our weather presenter Sean Batty is at the coast. Sean, how's it looking?
Well, I tell you what, I think I felt warmer in Liverpool in the snow last week. This wind is still really cutting just now. Got some very gusty winds still, especially in showers. We've got one just approaching from the west at the moment. Obviously nothing compared to last night's storm, but still very blustery and gusty. However, hopefully tonight many of us should get a decent night's sleep because it will be a bit quieter. But this is just the quiet between 2 storms. Of course, Storm Isha yesterday and Storm Jocelyn, as you were hearing, is on the way tomorrow. A very, very disturbed spell of weather around at the moment.
You touched on it there, Sean, but what can we expect for the rest of the week then?
Well, with Storm Jocelyn coming in, winds tomorrow are going to be a bit of a step down from what we had last night. Now, of course, last night we had gusts of wind just over 80 miles per hour off the M8 in Salisbury, but not quite as high as that tomorrow night. But I expect quite widely we could still see 50 to 60, maybe 70 in some spots. But of course, we do have an amber weather warning out covering the west coast, especially across lights of Arran, the Kintyre Peninsula, the Hebrides. Here, gusts of wind tomorrow up to around 80 miles per hour. Of course, ScotRail have cancelled all services tomorrow night. I expect there'll be a lot of ferry disruption as well, but once that storm's out of the way, hopefully things a bit quieter later in the week.
All right, Sean, for the moment, thank you. Well, other news tonight, and the UK COVID inquiry has heard that...
Well, thank goodness tonight will be a lot quieter, thankfully, down to this little ridge of high pressure toppling in from the west. Lots of you messaging me about midnight saying how scared you were last night with the winds. Tomorrow night's going to be another windy one. Not as strong as Isha, but still a very blustery, windy night to come tomorrow night. But I say, not as extreme as last night. At least tonight, though, things continue to quieten down. The blustery conditions ease down. The showers largely heading back towards the west coast later on, so it becomes largely dry with some clear spells over inland areas. And actually quite a chilly end tonight. Temperatures down to about 2 or 3 degrees. Parts of Lanarkshire, Stirlingshire, and also towards Fife. Now tomorrow we see rain coming in from the west, and that rain's going to be whistled through much of the day. There'll be some quite heavy bursts, especially around lunchtime, early afternoon.
and then that clears away, and then we're left behind with blustery showers coming back into western parts, but the winds will be picking up through the day, so a pretty miserable day tomorrow, but very mild, 12, 13 degrees Celsius. But tomorrow night, yes, we've got those strong and gusty winds coming back through. As I said, not as bad as Isha. We had gusts of wind, of course, just off the M8 of 84 miles per hour last night. I expect tomorrow night we're looking more in the region of around 60, maybe 70 miles per hour in the most exposed parts of the west. So certainly not as strong as last night, but still another very wild night to come tomorrow night. So that leaves behind blustery conditions on Wednesday with a few scattered showers, mainly around the west coast. Bye-bye.